Hey y'all, welcome back to another tutorial, and today I'm going to show y'all how I draped this skirt using fabrics from Move Fabrics. So we are going to start by wrapping the fabric around either yourself or your dress form, and you want to pull up the side that you want the slit to be on, and we are going to pinch and pin that area in place. This is what it should look like once you pin it. Next up, using a piece of chalk, we are going to mark the long side of our skirt, and we're going to also mark where we would like the length or the skirt to actually stop at. The other side you can leave alone for now, but once you're done, go ahead and lay the fabric out on the table. Now you want to lay that fabric out and cut about 1/2 inch to 1 inch on the outside of that chalk line that you created. Next, you'll need to draft a back skirt pattern and fold your fabric, and you want to cut 2 back skirt pieces on this folded piece of fabric. Sew your center back seam together, and if you added darts, sew those as well, and then you should have something like this. Now you want to go ahead and pin the front skirt to your dress form. Now I ended up realizing a little later that I had initially pinned my slit on the wrong side, so I'm going to end up switching it to the left leg in a moment, but it's still going to be the same steps. Now you're going to want to play around with the slit part a little more, so we want to create a really defined curve for this slit. The goal is to have the fabric look like it's all stacked on top of the slit. Now you are going to pin this in place just so that curve can hold its shape. Now for this tutorial, we will be using ultra stiff Pelon interfacing a little later, so make sure you have that ready for the curve as well. Now I believe earlier I said we cut both sides, but I actually only cut one side for this skirt. So once you have everything pinned at that curve, at that slit, you want to go ahead and pin the side seams of the skirt together on the longer side. Alright, so next I'm going to get into draping that next layer of fabric over our skirt. Now this is, as you can see from that initial video I showed y'all at the beginning, we're using 3 different color plaids for this skirt, and so right now I am just trying to get an idea of the placement. Now once I was satisfied with the first layer, I ended up with something like this, and then next I went and added a few red pieces, but I'm going to remove this and show y'all how we attach everything piece by piece. Okay, so now I removed everything, and we are going to start to do the real placement for all of the draping and the pleating. So I am adjusting the pleats and the curves that we have going along this slit, and I am pulling them back to line up with our side seam and tightening it where it needs to be more form-fitting. Now more than likely there should be a lot of fabric or excess fabric underneath this slit, this curve. We're not going to keep all of this fabric. We're going to end up removing some of it, but as we continue to place the draping on this curve a little better, we'll be able to see what we're going to keep versus what we need to cut. Okay, so next we are going to finish doing the placement for the draping and continue to pull all pieces of this curve of this drape into our side seam until there is no more fabric left to pull over. This bottom piece that you see underneath, that is what is going to get cut out, but the stuff that we've decided to keep within the drape, we want that all pulled off to the side. Next, you want to go ahead and cut the fabric that we won't be using for the slit, but you can leave a few inches, maybe 2 to 3 inches or so of excess fabric. We don't want to cut too much just because we don't know how we want to finish this hem. So next we're going to pull out our pellon. So I started off by cutting a curve into my pellon just so it could go against the curve of the body a little easier. You can start off by cutting a slight curve in yours and then place it against the body and keep adjusting it depending on how it fits. But this is how we are placing this inside of our slit. You want to start off by placing it in a downwards U shape, and then the back half of it that aligns with the side seam should go towards the back and the front part should go downwards. Next, since this is supposed to go inside of the skirt, I'm going to unpin some of the 1 or 2 of the bottom layers of our drape, and then we're going to open that up and we're going to place the pellon inside of that bottom layer and then repin it to the dress form. Once the ultra stiff pellon is pinned in place, it should look something like this. Next, we're going to thread our needle and we are going to start hand sewing this first layer of our drape in place. So I want to start off by hand sewing the side seam of our slit just to make sure all of that is being held in the right place correctly. So next, I am going to use the pattern that I created, the back skirt pattern, just to shape the curve or shape the hip of our side seam the same way that our back of our skirt is shaped. That way they could be identical. Next, we're going to cut off the excess fabric, but we're going to leave about 2 inches, maybe even 3 inches of excess space past that chalk line that we just drew, just to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room before we cut it more true to size. And the last part we're going to cut is the back side of our slit. I just want that back side of our slit to have a little bit more curve to it instead of being a straight line, which is what it currently is right now. I'm going to start the curve right where our slit meets, and I'm only cutting about I want to say 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches off of this. And you want to keep that piece that you cut off because you'll need that later for whenever you line this. So now that we have that done, we are going to start hand sewing in between each of our folds, in between the creases of our drape. I'm going to start off at the bottom and I'm going to start hand sewing our pellon to our fabric at the crease of this drape, at the crease of this fold. When sewing the other folds or sewing the other parts of the drape, I'm starting right above the slit and working my way to the hip. So I'm not hand sewing across the entire front of the skirt. We're mainly just focusing on that side area. So next, I am going to start draping our second layer of fabric. This part I'll be able to explain a little more. So when we are draping this second layer, we really want this piece of fabric to hang over the body, hang over the skirt. And so we want to play with this pellon piece that we have in our slit. We want to play along with that, so making sure the fabric drapes over that. We want to make sure the creases in these different shapes or these different curves in the drape are very visible. We also want to make sure that side seam, that hip also is like well fitted to the body too. Once you're done, or once I was done, I ended up having something like this. I just pinned the buttons down so I could have an idea of how it looked, but as you can see, I made sure the curves were super defined. Now we're going to go to the next step. Now before we start hand sewing though, if you would like to get an idea of your button placement too, just to see how it'll all look, you can go ahead and do that. Now it's time for us to start hand sewing that second layer of our drape in place. Now we still need to do more detail with the draping for the back half. We're only focusing on the front for right now. But when we are hand sewing this, I'm mainly focused on hand sewing more so the part that aligns with our pellon. And also there's another piece at the back along the back of the hip that needs to be hand sewn as well. And I'm not hand sewing this down to our back skirt, but I'm hand sewing the drape to itself at the back because I realized it was super important for me to get the specific shape that I'm going for. So if you have any places on your drape that you feel like are super important to get a specific shape, hand sew all those areas. Next we're going to sew in that side seam area or the slit area of our drape. So when you do this, you can do it either two ways. Either you could sew like a base, hand sew a base stitch right down the side seam, or you can sew right above each fold that's going along our side seam. So you would do a bunch of individual 1 to 2 inch long stitches that go along the top of each fold of the drape. Next, once that is hand sewn, we want to go in and we want to add our last layer of this drape. I wouldn't necessarily call this a full layer, it's more so scraps, but I wanted to have like a few peekaboos of red at the front, and then we'll have an actual train of our red plaid fabric that goes across the back. You can decide how you want this to go. Yeah, this part is of course completely up to your creative control, but we just want to have a few peaks of that third material. Next, we want to go in and attach our train. So I know I just mentioned this in the last part, but this is just a visual of what it looked like for me to create the train. It was very simple. I honestly didn't do too much for this part, so yeah, this part is up to your own creative preference as well. The last thing we need to do to our train before we start to do some more hand sewing is we just need to cut it and decide the length. For the train, I wanted it to have a lot of length. I want it to be very dramatic. Actually, I'm not gonna say very dramatic. It's probably about 6 or 7, 8 inches, maybe past floor length, but we have the actual skirt itself coming right at the floor. So that is what I did for my length. So next, I am going to cut open a small slit in the middle of our drape because I need this piece that we added on here, this red piece of plaid. I needed to go into some sort of actual seam just so it's not randomly sewn on top of the fabric, but I only cut open, I want to say, a 3 to 4 inch hole. It doesn't need to be too big, but you want to make sure wherever you cut it is in the right place. Now we can start hand sewing these red pieces to the actual drape itself. I'm going to start with this first piece. I'm going to start by sewing at the bottom of it where we opened up that little hole, and I'm going to sew along the edge, the inner edge of the piece. Next, we're going to hand sew the top of this other red plaid piece that we have added to our drape. Now in the video, I think I only sewed a small section, but I later went and sewed across the entire edge of the top of that drape. Next, we want to hand sew along the bottom edge of that same piece. This stitch is going to be covered by the second layer of our drape, so it won't be visible at all. I just realized I forgot to mention throughout the earlier parts of this video, I've been doing invisible stitches to make sure, of course, the stitches can't be seen. But for this one specifically, for this red piece that I'm sewing now, you don't have to do an invisible stitch. You can just do a regular base stitch, or not base stitch, a regular hand stitch. Next, I can start hand sewing the train as well, or where the train attaches to the skirt. This train starts at the hip and works its way to the middle of the back of the dress, so the center back, and then over again to the other hip. As you can see, it's attached to the center back now in this current frame, but I'm going to attach it also to the hip as well. Next, we want this to lay a lot better than it currently is, so we're going to need to remove a lot of this bulk underneath the skirt. We're only doing this for our second layer, since there is so much draping, and this is like one of our biggest piece of fabrics used in the drape. There is just a lot of excess fabric underneath it, so anything we cut, we also want to hand sew that opening closed. So if we cut through some pleats, cut through some folds, we also want to hand sew those closed as well. Next, to get a little more thorough with our hand sewing, I'm going to take or unpin the back parts of our drape. So I unpinned the train as well as unpinned the side area of the second layer of our drape, that green fabric. And now we're about to go back in and do some more hand sewing. Also, I know unpinned, this looks a little crazy, but once we finish hand sewing, we'll be able to cut more of this fabric away and make it look neater. So now I want to prepare to cut more of this side seam down. So I am going to unpin our drape, unpin the skirt on the side, and pin the two layers, the front and the back of this skirt together. And we're going to pin this together as if we are about to sew it, right? So we're going to pin it from the top to the bottom at this hip seam, but we're really going to prepare to cut that down a little bit shorter in a moment. Now for the skirt, we are going for a asymmetrical type of vibe. So I'm going to cut the side hip down a little bit lower, the left hip. I'm going to cut this side down just a tad bit lower, and for the right hip, we're not going to cut too much, just enough for it to meet with this other side that we've angled. And then we're also going to cut the front too. So now to cut down this other side, we're first going to need to cut down the pellon. Just because I don't necessarily want that to be sewn into the seam, it'll end up making our seam super bulky. So I'm going to cut the pellon down about an inch or so shorter than where our seam would be. Once that's cut, we can also go in and cut down any extra fabric and just make sure that there is enough fabric there for a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to take this down, or take the back skirt down, and we are going to sew the side seams together on the sewing machine. Now, unfortunately, I had an issue with my camera at this point, so I didn't get to get the last part of this tutorial, but essentially all I did after sewing the dress or the skirt together at the side seams was I repinned the two areas, so the train and the second layer of the drape, back where it originally was, and then hand tacked those few areas in place, and then the drape itself was done. Later on, I ended up adding lining and a zipper using that skirt pattern that I made, as well as I created a skirt pattern for the front, and that was how I completed this look. Sorry I didn't get to get that last part on camera. And then of course you see me here adding the buttons to finish it off. But here's a look at how it turned out. This look is so gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And then here's how it looks on my model. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you guys next time. Bye y'all.